You stand at the threshold of an enigmatic journey where your outer allure becomes the canvas upon which hidden truths are painted in shades of twilight and shadow. Here, every glance in the mirror unveils a complexity far deeper than the surface, a labyrinth of carefully orchestrated gestures, whispered justifications, and silent compromises that shape who you appear to be. In these quiet moments of reflection, you confront a startling revelation. Your charm is not merely an expression of beauty or wit, but a potent instrument of manipulation, a dark magnetism that draws others near while concealing the murky depths of your inner self. It is as if you have constructed a delicate facade, layer upon layer, that not only captivates, but also camouflages a reality of calculated persuasion. Recall for a moment the findings from cognitive dissonance studies, experiments that demonstrate how the mind, when burdened by conflicting beliefs, will subtly adjust its narrative to ease the tension. In those controlled settings, each small concession was not an isolated choice, but part of an incremental transformation. In much the same way, your interactions with the ceaseless pulse of digital culture, where social media churns out curated opinions and viral trends, reveal a landscape where individual authenticity is sacrificed on the altar of collective validation. Your charm, once a genuine expression of your true self, has gradually evolved into a meticulously honed mask. Every smile that you offer, every nod that you give, has been carefully calibrated to meet external expectations while shielding the raw, unfiltered facets of your personality. And with every measured gesture, you weave another thread into the intricate tapestry of self-deception, a tapestry that blurs the lines between sincere attraction and strategic manipulation. In the realm of digital echo chambers, where algorithms quantify every nuance of human behavior, the subtle interplay of persuasion becomes even more pronounced. Here, your internal conflicts are amplified by the relentless feedback of likes, shares, and retweets, each a quiet vote that nudges you further toward conformity. The individual becomes a part of a vast, unyielding network, a complex mosaic of approval that, over time, diminishes the clarity of your own voice. Yet, amid the carefully constructed layers of your facade, there flickers a fleeting spark, a fragile possibility that the authentic self you once knew might still be reclaimed. For a brief, disarming moment, you entertain the thought that perhaps redemption is possible, that beneath the artifice lies a core of unblemished truth waiting to be rediscovered. However, as quickly as that hope emerges, it is eclipsed by the cumulative weight of innumerable small, rationalized choices, a relentless tide that deepens the shadow of self-deception. Now, as you continue on this path, where every gesture, every quiet concession weaves into the very fabric of your identity, I ask you, when the subtle language of charm becomes indistinguishable from the art of manipulation, and every carefully justified act nudges you deeper into the darkness, will you dare to question the foundation of your own allure, or will you let the veil you've crafted define your destiny as you step ever further into the unknown? You stand at the threshold of a realm governed by hidden rules, a place where every interaction is meticulously crafted by the unseen geometry of human desire. Here, your very being is dissected by an intricate design of subtle cues and deliberate signals, each one calibrated to shift your inner balance and tilt your perceptions. In this state, seduction is not merely an act, It is an architecture of influence, built from the quiet calculus of the human mind. Imagine, for a moment, that every glance exchanged, every word softly uttered, is a carefully drawn line in an elaborate blueprint, a plan that spans centuries of observation and refined manipulation. In this space, you are invited to peer behind the facade of charm and recognize that what you perceive as mere attractiveness is, in fact, a sophisticated mechanism engineered to sway your thoughts and actions. You recall the precision of cognitive dissonance studies. In environments where conflicting beliefs are forced to coexist, the mind begins to adjust its narrative, quietly rewriting the boundaries between what is acceptable and what is not. In those experimental settings, each minor shift in attitude is not an isolated anomaly, but part of a broader pattern, a pattern that, when viewed in its entirety, forms the core of seductive influence. This is the dark calculus that underpins every seemingly spontaneous act of allure. In your own life, you have witnessed how digital realms amplify these forces. Social media platforms serve as colossal echo chambers where algorithms meticulously track your every move, gradually molding your preferences and opinions. Each like, each share, each fleeting moment of online engagement contributes to a vast, invisible network of influence that whispers the same seductive mantra: conform, agree, and become part of the collective pulse. It is in this digital crucible that your individuality is subtly reshaped, your personal narrative rewritten by the relentless flow of curated content. Now, consider the power of group dynamics revealed in experiments beyond the classics. Studies on group polarization have shown that when individuals are exposed to a consistent stream of extreme opinions, their own beliefs tend to shift towards that same extremity. In a modern context, this means that the seductive power of collective persuasion is ever present, transforming gentle persuasion into a formidable force that drives you to abandon your innate judgments. In these moments, your inner voice is not silenced by overt command, but gradually drowned out by the steady, imperceptible tide of consensus. Within this complex interplay, you notice the stark contrast between those who wield seduction as a conscious, calculated tool and those who are unwittingly drawn into its vortex. Some individuals embrace their role as architects of influence, meticulously designing interactions that leave little room for genuine dissent. Others, caught in the web of subtle manipulation, slowly surrender their autonomy. Each quiet concession, each moment of unchallenged approval, a step deeper into a labyrinth where control is both given and taken. As you traverse this territory, you become acutely aware of the internal battles that define this process. Every time you rationalize a small compromise, justifying a word left unsaid or a nuance ignored, you are, in effect, redrawing the blueprint of your own character. The seductive power of influence, like a masterful design etched in the absence of light, gradually obscures the clear lines of your former self, replacing them with a mosaic of shadow and intent. For a brief, disarming moment, you imagine reclaiming the clarity of your original convictions, a flash of hope that perhaps the raw, untainted truth of who you once were still lingers somewhere beneath the layers of manipulation. But even as that possibility flares, it is swiftly subdued by the cold, measured logic of cumulative influence. The very acts you once dismissed as minor now coalesce into a dominant force, one that redefines your moral architecture with each passing day. In this ongoing journey, you come to understand that the architecture behind seduction is a living, evolving entity. It is shaped by the interplay of personal choice and external pressure, of rational thought and emotional surrender. The blueprints are not static. They are continuously redrafted by the silent interplay of your inner conflicts and the digital echoes of modern society. Every decision, every fleeting impulse is a building block in this dark edifice, each one contributing to the overall structure that governs your interactions and shapes your destiny. And so, as you stand amid these shifting lines and ever-darkening shadows, I leave you with this thought. When the very framework of your influence is defined by the subtle, relentless forces of persuasion, will you have the strength to deconstruct the architecture that has reshaped your identity? Or will you allow these whispered blueprints to dictate the course of your journey, guiding you ever deeper into the abyss of your own creation? Imagine a world where every glance, every gesture, every word is meticulously crafted to influence your deepest desires. A realm where unseen architects design the very fabric of your thoughts and emotions. Seduction isn't merely about allure or charm. It's a calculated dance of psychology and strategy. From the persuasive rhetoric of ancient orators to the subliminal cues in modern advertising, the art of seduction has been honed and perfected over millennia. But what makes it so effective? Consider the concept of reciprocity. When someone offers you something, a gift, a compliment, a favor, you feel an intrinsic obligation to return the gesture. This subtle exchange has been exploited by marketers and politicians alike, weaving a web of indebtedness that guides your decisions. Then, there's social proof. In unfamiliar situations, we look to others for guidance. It's why laugh tracks make sitcoms funnier, or why products labeled as best-selling attract more buyers. The actions and endorsements of others validate our choices, often without us realizing it. Are you truly the master of your own decisions? Delve deeper into the realm of emotional manipulation. Advertisements tug at your heartstrings, political speeches ignite your passions, and social media platforms curate content to keep you endlessly scrolling. By tapping into your emotions, fear, joy, anger, desire, these forces shape your perceptions and ultimately your reality. But to what end? Understanding these mechanisms isn't just about recognizing external influences. It's about reclaiming your autonomy. By becoming aware of the strings that pull at your psyche, you can begin to cut them one by one. So, the next time you feel compelled, ask yourself, who is holding the blueprint? There is a language older than words, a whisper beneath the surface of conversation. A hidden current, silent, yet commanding. It is the art of the unseen, the power of the unsaid, a force that molds perception without ever being acknowledged. You have felt it, in the magnetic presence of someone who seems to pull the world toward them, in the way certain figures can command a room without uttering a word. Perhaps you have wielded it yourself, knowingly or not. But the real question is, when was the last time it was used on you? Because whether you recognize it or not, it is always in motion. Psychologists have spent decades dissecting human behavior, peeling back layers of instinct to expose the mechanics of influence. And in their findings lies a quiet horror. Words are secondary. The majority of human communication, the signals that dictate trust, attraction, submission, is built on something far more primal. A glance held a fraction too long. A pause, deliberate, drawing anticipation like a blade unsheathed, the slightest shift in posture, positioning one's presence as dominant, unchallenged. These are the silent weapons, the tools of those who shape the world, not by force, but by suggestion. And suggestion is all it takes. A well-placed silence forces the other to fill the void. A slight mirroring of breath, a subtle mimicry of motion, lulls the subconscious into comfort. Patterns emerge, and the mind, desperate for familiarity, follows. A person who controls their stillness, who withholds reaction, becomes the one who dictates the flow of conversation, the pacing of emotions, the direction of thought. Now, consider this. If influence exists beyond language, beyond reason, what defenses do you truly have? There are those who understand this, who sharpen there is a certain gravity to deception, the kind that does not announce itself with grand gestures or reckless falsehoods, but instead seeps into the mind unnoticed, reshaping reality from within. The most effective lies are not loud. They are whispered. They are not forced. They are invited. They do not seek to convince. They simply exist, waiting to be accepted. And here is the cruelest paradox. Truth and falsehood are often indistinguishable until it is too late. A suggestion planted at the right moment. A phrase repeated until it feels familiar. A memory rewritten, not through force, but through the mind's own tendency to bridge gaps, to resolve inconsistencies, to fabricate coherence where none exists. Elizabeth Loftus's research on memory tampering proved a terrifying reality. Perception is malleable. A single altered word, smashed instead of hit, and suddenly a witness recalls shattered glass that was never there. A minor shift, yet it rewires the past. Now, imagine this on a grander scale. A narrative so subtly crafted that it does not seek permission to enter the mind. It simply makes itself at home. A shift in framing, a redefinition of roles, a villain conjured not from fact, but from necessity. The architects of deception do not argue. They do not confront. They create a world where resistance feels futile, where to question is to unravel one's own sense of reality. And here is where you must ask yourself, how much of what you know was given to you rather than discovered? Social constructs, digital landscapes, engineered controversies. They shape emotions, dictate loyalties, redefine history. You do not just consume these stories, you embody them. The whisper of deceit does not only surround you, it pulses within, guiding your beliefs, influencing your trust, dictating who you see as an ally and who you brand an enemy. And yet, deception is not always malicious. It can be a means of survival, a tool of influence, a weapon wielded by both predator and prey. Some manipulate out of cruelty, others out of necessity. Some whisper lies to control, others to protect. The moral divide is not always clear, and when the veil is finally lifted, when the narrative unravels, what will you do with the truth? But we are not there yet. The descent is only beginning. There is still more to uncover, more illusions to dismantle, because before you can recognize deception in others, you must first confront the deceptions you tell yourself, and that is where things truly become dangerous. Desire is a mirror. It does not conjure illusions. It reflects the unspoken, the concealed, the aching void within. What draws you in? What lingers in your mind? What compels your every thought? These are not coincidences. They are the fragments of longing embedded deep in your psyche, searching for validation. But mirrors are never honest. They distort, they shape, they lie. And those who understand this wield an unspeakable power. The most compelling figures, the ones who command attention without demand, are not those who present themselves plainly. No, they are the ones who learn to become reflections of the needs, fears, and desires of others. They do not impose, they suggest. They do not declare, they imply. They weave an illusion not by force, but by allowing others to project onto them what they wish to see. This is why people chase ghosts. It is not presence that binds them. It is absence. A conversation that ends too soon. A fleeting moment that lingers just beyond reach. The unanswered question, the unfinished thought, the space where certainty should be. The Zeigarnik effect explains this. The brain fixates on what is incomplete. It obsesses over the unresolved. It is why cliffhangers are addictive, why lost love is more potent than love fulfilled, why the unknown seduces more than certainty ever could. What is left open-ended haunts the mind more than what is understood. And so, the master of this game does not push. They withdraw. They do not explain. They let the other person fill in the gaps, imagining depth where there may be none. Because in the absence of truth, the mind will create its own. But mirrors do not reflect only others. They reflect the one holding them. What happens when you become lost in the illusion you create? When the boundaries blur between the reflection and the reality? When you are no longer certain whether you are controlling the image or whether it is controlling you? And that is where the descent begins. The air shifts in the presence of those who understand this. You have seen them, felt them, the ones who move without force, yet the world bends to their rhythm. They do not raise their voices, yet they are heard. They do not chase, yet they are followed. Their authority is not a command. It is a presence, a gravitational pull that draws others in without resistance. You may think dominance is about strength, but that is a child's version of power. True dominance lies in perception, in understanding how the mind hesitates, yearns, and submits without realizing it. Consider Milgram's obedience experiment, a study not in cruelty, but in control. The subject believes they are in charge, yet with every slight nudge, every carefully structured instruction, they obey. Not because they are forced, but because the environment has been crafted so precisely that resistance feels unnatural. This is the nature of subtle persuasion, not to confront, but to shape, not to demand, but to suggest, to lead without appearing to lead, until submission feels like choice and surrender feels like will. And yet, there is a moment, a fracture in the illusion, when two forces recognize each other in the dark. A hesitation, a flicker of understanding, when both realize the game is being played from both sides. It is in this moment that true mastery is revealed. For dominance is not simply about control. It is about knowing when to yield, when to retreat, when to let the other believe they have won. And that, of course, is where the real power begins. But what happens when the one you seek to influence refuses to yield? What happens when the dance is disrupted?